वेलकम टू कम्युनिटी राउंड अप। आज हम यहाँ पे ब्रैम्पटन में सिटी हॉल के पास हैं जहाँ पे कि विजिल रखा गया था जो 4 लोगों की डेथ हुई थी लंदन ओंटारियो में उनके लिए। तो यहाँ पे काफ़ी जो है ह्यूज तादाद में लोग आए हुए थे डिफरेंट कम्युनिटीज़ के, ब्लैक कम्युनिटी से भी और हमारे सिख भाई भी हमारे साथ खड़े हुए थे। यहाँ पे डिफरेंट लोगों ने जो है अपने जो है ख्यालात का इजहार किया और यहाँ पे बहुत सारे पॉलिटिशियंस भी थे। तो सबसे पहले तो हमने यहाँ पे देखा कि जो पुलिस रीजनल पुलिस पीर पुलिस के चीफ हैं जो निशान हैं वो थे आए हुए, और फिर ब्रैम्पटन के मेयर थे पैट्रिक ब्राउन। इसके अलावा एमपी सोनिया सिद्धू थी, एमपी कमल खेरा थी, एमपी रूबी सोहता थी, और कंजर्वेटिव पार्टी के भी बहुत सारे लोग थे। और उनके अंदर शामिल थे एमपीपी खलीद रशीद, एमपीपी अमरजोत संधू और एमपीपी जो हैं और मिनिस्टर भी हैं रेड टेपिज्म के प्रमित सरकारिया जी। तो काफ़ी यहाँ पे लोग आए हुए थे और उन्होंने काफ़ी इस चीज़ को कंडेम किया और उसके लिए अफसोस का इजहार किया। इसके अलावा विलियम ऑस्लर के प्रेसिडेंट जो डॉक्टर नवीद हैं वो भी थे, और राइटसन यूनिवर्सिटी में आपको पता है भी कुछ हेट्रेड के वाक़यात हुए थे तो उसके प्रेसिडेंट डॉक्टर लक्ष्मी भी थे। तो सब ने कहा कि इस मुल्क में से हेट्रेड और इंटॉलरेंस और इस्लामोफोबिया को ख़त्म करने की ज़रूरत है। तो इसी सिलसिले में हमने यहाँ पे जो सारा कैप्चर किया है आइए आपको दिखाते हैं जी। तो नाजरीन, इस वक्त हमारे साथ जो है रीजनल काउंसिल माइकल पलेशी हैं, तो हम उनसे पूछेंगे इस वाक़े के बारे में और वो अपनी स्टेटमेंट इस वक्त हमें देंगे। तो हम उनसे बोलते हैं कि हमारे साथ बात करें प्लीज़। यस, हाय माइकल, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर जॉइनिंग विद अस एंड व्हाट डू यू हैव टू से अबाउट दिस वेरी horrific and sad incident that took place in London?
Yeah, it's an absolute tragedy what has happened, and you know, if we can do anything from this event here is learn that we're not separate in this. We're all together. We're together to show that we all love one another in this time, especially during COVID. Everybody needs each other so much now more than ever before. So I think that this shows a little bit of unity to say that we stand with you. You're not alone. We're together. We love you and we love everybody.
जी ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਕਮਲ ਖੇਰਾ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇਸ ਵਾक़ੇ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਲੰਡਨ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਇਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੀ ਖਿਆਲ ਨੇ। ਕਮਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵੈਸਟ ਤੋਂ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਦੇ ਐਮਪੀ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਖਿਆਲਾਤ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਨਗੇ। ਤੇ ਕਮਲ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹੋ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਜੀ, ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਨੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪਿਆਰ ਭਰੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਨਮਸਕਾਰ, अस्सलाम वालेकुम। ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਟੈਰਰਿਸਟ ਐਕਟ ਹੋਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਲੰਡਨ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ 'ਚ, ਅਸੀਂ ਕਦੇ ਭੁੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਦੇ। ਇਟ ਟੁਕ you know, ਅਸੀਂ ਜਦ walks ਤੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ, we don't think twice about going for walks again. And the 4 lives that have been lost, we can't come to terms with what just happened. And I think we all have a role and a responsibility to stand up against hate, to stand up against Islamophobia in all its forms. And we all have a responsibility in making that happen. ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇੰਨੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟੈਰਰਿਸਟ ਅਟੈਕ ਇੱਥੇ ਲੰਡਨ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ 'ਚ ਹੋਇਆ ਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਕਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਭੁੱਲ ਸਕਦੇ। ਅਤੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਹੀ ਪ੍ਰੇਅਰਸ it's with the Muslim community, it's with the young Afzal, the 9-year-old who's in critical care right now, and the whole Afzal family that has went through this torture for absolutely nothing.
Thank you very much for your call.
Thank you जी।
अच्छा जी, हमारे साथ इस वक्त जंदाली साहब ने और वो इस बड़े अफसोस के वाक़े के उत्ते कुछ कहना चाहते हैं। असीं उन्हां दे नाल गल करांगे और पूछांगे कि उन्हां दे की कॉमेंट्स ने।
हाँ जी, मैं सब तो पहला तो मैं अंटारियो सिख एंड गुरुद्वारा कौंसल वालों जो 11 तारीख ਨੂੰ ਲੰਡਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਵੱਡੀ ਦੁਖਦਾਈ ਘਟਨਾ ਵਾਪਰੀ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਘੋਰ ਸ਼ਬਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਖੇਧੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅਤੇ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਜੋ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਨੇ ਰਾਈਟ ਵੇ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਸ ਹਥਿਆਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਉਸੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਕਾਬੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਅਤੇ ਜੋ ਅਸਲੀ ਗੱਲ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਲਿਆ ਕੇ ਰੱਖੀ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਤੇ ਤਿੰਨੇ ਹੀ ਰਾਜਨੀਤਿਕ ਪਾਰਟੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਲਿਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੁਰਜ਼ੋਰ ਸ਼ਬਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਲਾਘਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਰਾਈਟ ਵੇ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਨੇ, ਇੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਲਿਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੌਸਲਾ ਵਧਿਆ ਅਤੇ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਚਾਨਣ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਤੇ ਵੀ ਥਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਉਸੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਰੰਪਟਨ ਸਿਟੀ ਹਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਕੇ ਮੁਸਲਮਾਨ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਮਦਰਦੀ ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਮਦਰਦੀ ਜਤਾ ਜਿਤਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਰੇ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਵਾਸੀ ਅੰਟਾਰੀਓ ਵਾਸੀ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਸਿਟੀ ਹਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ। ਅਸੀਂ ਅੰਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਿੱਖ ਐਂਡ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਕੌਂਸਲ ਵੱਲੋਂ जो उस हत्यारे ने जो काम किया उसकी घोर शब्दों के निखेधी करते।
बहुत मेहरबानी जी, बहुत
वाहिगुरू जी।
अच्छा जी, हमारे साथ साढ़े नाल ने सोनिया सिद्धू जी ब्रैम्पटन साउथ तो MP ने लिबरल पार्टी तो असीं उन्हां दे नाल भी गल करना चाहांगे, पुछांगे कि जिहड़ा वाक़या होया इस दे बारे विच उन्हां दा की ख्याल है।
बिल्कुल जी, जिवें कि तुसीं देखिया कि अज ब्रैम्पटन दे विच जिहड़ा कैंडल विजल हो रहा हैगा, आपां सारे इत्थे आए हो गए स्टैंड विद द मुस्लिम कम्यूनिटी जिहड़ी कि कदी भी किसी नाल ना अगे तो वापर सके। ये स्ट्रोंग मैसेज हैगा कि रेसिज्म की कोई एग्जिस्टेंस नहीं हैगी इस कैनेडा च, कोई प्लेस नहीं हैगी इस्लामोफोबिया की। सो अज ये बहुत वड्डा मैसेज हैगा, नो टू रेसिज्म, नो टू हेट। सो उहदे लई कॉन्क्रीट जिहड़े स्टैप जिहड़े आ मैं सोचदी हैगी एक ते जिहड़ी समिट वास्ते आई सपोर्टेड दैट समिट कि जिहड़ा मुस्लिम कौंसल वल्लों ये मंग की गई हैगी कि इस्लामोफोबिया के उत्ते समिट होवे, उहदे आई सपोर्टेड दैट। सैकेंड थिंग जिहड़ी मैं स्टेटस ऑफ वुमेन दी वाइस चेयर हैगी है, ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਟਿਊਜ਼ਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਆਨਲਾਈਨ ਹੇਟ ਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕੰਬੈਟ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ, ਸਾਈਬਰ ਬੁਲਿੰਗ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਟੈਪ ਆ, ਪਰ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੱਜ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਇਕੱਠੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਪ੍ਰੇ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੱਚਾ ਫਾਇਜ਼ ਆ ਉਹਦੀ ਤੰਦਰੁਸਤੀ ਵਾਸਤੇ। ਮਾਈ ਹਾਰਟਫੈਲਟ ਕੰਡੋਲੈਂਸਸ ਟੂ 4 ਮੈਂਬਰਸ, ਇਟ ਸ਼ੁਡਨਟ ਬੀ ਹੈਪਨ। ਸਟਰੋਂਗਲੀ ਆਈ ਕੰਡੈਮ ਦਿਸ ਐਕਟ ਆਫ ਟੈਰਰਿਜ਼ਮ।
Thank you very much for your comment.
Thank you ji.
The Afzal family were contributors to society, making Canada a better place as professionals and as Muslims who came here for a better life for themselves and for their families. It has been a very sad week, but we have been comforted by consoling words from people from all backgrounds and faiths. And we are so honored to see the diversity here today, both those speaking on stage and those standing amongst us here in Brampton. Thank you to the City of Brampton for offering these steps and making tonight possible for our community-led prayer vigil today. Leadership from our city matters, and we are truly grateful. We will hear from Mayor Patrick Brown, Chief of Police, from Indigenous community and faith and interfaith leaders, as well as local government representatives. Let's begin with the blessed words from the Holy Quran, recited by our very own Sheikh Ashraf Tony, Imam at Masjid Al-Salman.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you. Welcome everyone. I will recite some ayat from Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse number 135 to 157. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. The translation of this ayat: O you who believe, seek help in patience and prayer. Truly Allah is with patient. And they say not of those who are killed in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are dead, in fact, they are living, but you don't perceive that life. And certainly we shall test you with something of fear, hunger, loss of wealth, lives, and fruits. But give glad guidance to the patient. When affected with calamity, who says, truly to Allah we belong, and truly to Him we shall return. Jazakumullahu khairan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sheikh Afzal, for that beautiful recitation. If I can please just remind everyone, if we can please keep a distance from each other, I would really appreciate that. Thank you very much. I would like everyone to please stand up as we will be singing the Canadian National Anthem. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all thy sons command, with glowing heart we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free, from far and wide. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. I would like to call up His Worship Mayor Patrick Brown to say a few words.
Well, thank you for coming here tonight for our city's collective opportunity to mourn the senseless loss of life in London. You know, words don't do justice when you see a terrorist act like that, a senseless killing like that, fueled by hate. It makes you want to hold your children closer and hold your family closer. And what is so heartbreaking is it happens again. I remember a few years ago when we saw the attack in Saint Foy in Quebec City at that masjid. And I think we were all shocked from coast to coast that an act of such hatred, of such violence could happen in our country. And at the time we said we have to combat hate and Islamophobia, but here we are again, and it's heart-wrenching. When you think of the Afzal family in London and what has been robbed of that family, I know we wanted to have an opportunity to come together and show solidarity with the Muslim community, to say that we stand shoulder to shoulder. When one part of our family is attacked, we're all attacked. I think it goes without saying that Canada and Brampton is an amazing place to live, and the Muslim family in our country does so much to make Canada what it is, to make Brampton what it is. And looking at some of the speakers today who are going to share in our morning, frankly, they run all the institutions in our city. If you look at Dr. Naveed Mohammed running the hospital, Mohammed Lashmi running Ryerson, the list goes on and on, the contributions in every sphere. Really, like I said, words don't do justice. But I think as we look at this senseless act of hate, this vile act of terrorism, we have to ask ourselves, how does this happen in the country that we love? How does this happen in Canada, that someone can grow up with such hate in their heart? What can we do as a community to make sure we build an environment where hate like this doesn't exist? And there's no way to gloss over it. This is not an isolated incident. And you see it. You see it online when you write comments. I know we're all coming together. Every level of government is great to see representatives from across the political spectrum. But for me, it's really tough to understand. My best friend growing up was a fellow by the name of Walid Solomon, who is a Muslim faith, and I just knew his family as the family I spent time with. And to think that his family would be scared for their own safety simply because of their faith gives you chills. And I know we live in a city that is a multicultural mosaic that we're proud of, but I really think as we grieve and as we mourn the senseless loss, we have to ask ourselves, what can we do? And there's work. There is work to do. You know, I look online and you see some of the hate where there's websites like Rebel that spew vile again and again for anyone that stands up against Islamophobia. You look at the debate that happened in the House of Commons where it wasn't a consensus. I think we're at a consensus today, but it's not that long ago that it wasn't a consensus. We have work to do. You look what's happening in Quebec right now with Bill 21, which is an attack on religious freedom, and once again, it's not a consensus that we should all be standing up to something that diminishes religious freedom. That's happening in the province next to Ontario, and that makes your blood boil. We have work to do, and so as we mourn, and as we shed tears, I really hope as a community we can do everything possible to not only stand shoulder to shoulder with the Muslim community in our city and to tell them that they are loved and they are safe, but to make sure that in those corners of our country, in those corners of our community, where making an Islamophobic statement is acceptable and people ignore it or they're quiet. Now, how often you have a discussion on Islamophobia and you look online and there are people that spew hate and it goes unabated? Or you look what's happening in Quebec with Bill 21 and it's more convenient to be silent and quiet. We can't be silent and quiet because there are lives at risk. These are real families and real people. These are our friends, our neighbors, our brothers and sisters. And so tonight we shed a tear. But I ask all of you, across every level of government, across every corner of our community, in every walk of life, in every setting, that we work together to create that safe community, that safe country, where no one lives in fear based on the God they worship. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, Mayor Patrick Brown, for your words. I would also like to thank the city for recognizing this situation and for being an ally to us when we need it the most. I would now like to call on Imam Sheikh Zahir Bacchus from Jamaatul Ansar and CDN Council of Imams, who will say a few words for us.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And may the peace and blessings of Almighty God be on every one of you. It is a difficult time, indeed, not only to digest what has happened to our community as we digested years ago with Quebec City, and we digested last fall at the IMO, but this one was a little bit hard to digest completely because of the 3 generations of Canadian citizens, Muslims, who were taken so tragically, and their young boy who will go back to a home that the people that he lived with, that he loved and loved him, that they're not going to be there. Very difficult. I know from speaking to community members and myself that there was a range of emotions that we experienced from Monday when we found out all the way to today. We were saddened. We were numb. Some people told me they were numb. There was a little of depression, a little of loss. There was anger. Anger kicked in. Bitterness kicked in. I can tell you bitterness kicked in. And now it's what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And how do we find the strength in order to continue and to fight against what we know the majority of people, the overwhelming majority of people, do not hold in themselves? Racism, intolerance, Islamophobic ideals and ideologies. But how do we continue on knowing that we have run through the gambit of emotions? And so, first of all, we'd like to thank everyone. On behalf of the Muslim community, thank you all. We've had wonderful messages from not only the mayors of our cities and the politicians, but from every sector. All of our faith leaders have sent us messages and been with there and marched with us and attended. And communities from all of the religious institutions and churches and so on have stood beside us. But as our honorable mayor has said, how do we get through this so that it doesn't happen again? How do we move on? How do we move on? That is each and every one of us taking the responsibility to acting upon what? Defending one another. Taking it upon ourselves, upon our shoulders, to whatever ideals or intolerance that we have, to help and to work to rid our community and ourselves of it. To work not just with elders, but the youth in our schools, to rid intolerance, to work with bodies and institutions that are working towards the purification of what has occurred or what was tolerated in the past. I was telling our chief of police, Chief Nish, I saw his wonderful work by some friends who handled a situation, who had a situation in Halton. And the way that the police officers dealt with the situation was such a relief to them. And I said this was on the shoulders of Chief Nish, who is now, alhamdulillah, our chief of police. And the wonderful work, yes, he deserves, and they deserve a lot of credit. They do. And we see the work in our hospitals. Dr. Naveed's going to come up. And we see the work of the doctors and the frontline workers. And we see wonderful people in all sectors that came together during this pandemic to help one another, to lend a hand to one another, to go and to collect food and to bolster our shelters and our food banks from all walks of life. That is what we are as a community. We're strong when we're together, and we're weak when we're separated and apart. We are weak when we're separated and when we're apart. And so we want, as a community, we've been telling our congregants and our community, hold your head up high and walk on the sidewalk with your kids. And don't be afraid. Because the people that you meet on the streets of Brampton, on the streets of Mississauga, on the streets of Toronto, on the streets of wherever, are people who love and who care and who have compassion. You may come across a few, but the overwhelming majority are the ones who care. But there's still a lot of work. There's still a lot of work. You know, I was at a vigil in Toronto on Saturday, and at the same moment that vigil was happening and other vigil was happening, a black sister in hijab was thrown to the curb walking in Edmonton. The same time that the vigils were happening, there was another attack. Can you believe that? Do we have work to do? We have a lot of work to do. But we have work to do, not individually, not standing, you know, individually, but standing collectively. That's the work that we have to do, is to stand with each other collectively, to hold out our hands as we have, and have people take it as you have. And so we want to continue that work together. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be kind to us and shower His blessings upon us. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
If I can please just remind everyone to keep a 2 feet physical distance. I know we're gathered outside, but if we can please just ensure that all the rules are followed, that would be very appreciated. Thank you. I would now like to call upon Chief Nishan, the Chief of Police, Peel Regional Police, to say a few words, please.
Good evening, everyone, and on behalf of our 3,200 members of Peel Regional Police, I want to first convey our condolences to the Afzal family and to our Muslim community, our brothers and sisters, Assalam. I want to say that, you know, on a personal level, that's why I've taken my hat off, because I think this is a personal moment where we're honoring lives, but I think, you know, you all have to understand that we have, you can see the composition of our officers here. We all reflect this community in every possible way. And I know that, you know, my 88 Sri Lankan Tamil mother talking to my 10-year-old daughter about whether it was safe now, whether to stand on an intersection, crossed everybody's minds. Could this be my family? Could this be your family? I want to first say that we do not want to diminish the prevalence of Islamophobia across this country, internationally, and it has no place. It has no place. So, with reflection on the loss of life, which I think Mayor Brown appropriately indicated, this is not the first time we've seen this across this country, this world. And we know that hate exists. And to Imam Baqas's comments about what are we doing together, I think the most important thing as your chief to be able to tell you is that we will not allow an ounce of it to exist in this community. We will squeeze every little bit possible out of this community. And I want you as a community, as we all question what does safety look like for us, is to understand that I want you to reclaim this community as beautiful and vibrant, the most diverse region across this country, and that is what makes us strong. And I think the strength of it is your ability, after we honor and pay a tribute is to encourage your friends and family to reclaim it. I want to acknowledge, though, that people's feeling of safety, their perception of safety, is built upon the element of reassurance about what is going to be done. I need to tell you that Peel Region has, because of these amazing officers that are all around us here, have the strongest response to hate-motivated incidents and crimes anywhere in Canada. This is something for us to be confident and aware of. If it's a crime, we will pursue it relentlessly to the very end, and so will our justice partners. If it's an incident that's in a grocery store or playground, it gets just as much attention. I can tell you, I have experienced that as a young person, my family has, and there's nothing worse than believing that nobody will take it seriously. I think the message I want to reassure everybody is that this past week, after the London incident, we reached out as best as we could to our multi-faith stakeholders, community partners, to let them know that we are there. We have reassurance programming that gets commissioned as soon as we get an international or a localized hate incident. And this past week, we've had other police agencies from across Canada calling us to find out what the programming is like, what do we do differently, why is it different here in Peel. And frankly, our role is not just to make Peel safe, but make this country safe and to be leaders in that. So my final comments to you is that on behalf of all of our members, we stand shoulder to shoulder to you, but I need you all to know with the greatest of sincerity, you have an organization, a chief, that will not tolerate an ounce of hate in this community. We will do everything possible at every possible turn to stop it, to investigate, prosecute it, eliminate it. And to Imam Bacchus's comments, this is something that's incumbent upon all of us to do. Reclaim this community as for its vibrant state, and we will bring back the joy of diversity here and not let hate take its roots. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Nishan Juriappa, for your words. It's really important for our community to hear that we have the police behind us and that we're supported, so thank you very much. I would now like to call upon Dr. Naveed Mohammed, who is the President and CEO of William Osler Health System, to say a few words.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm here today as the President and CEO of William Osler Health System, but I'm also here as a Canadian, as a Muslim, and as a Pakistani. When we learned about the tragic and senseless act of violence in London last week, our whole Osler family, like each of you, was shocked and deeply saddened. The loved ones of the Afzal family and the entire London Muslim community continue to be in our thoughts and prayers. And I want you to remember those words, thoughts and prayers. We mourn with them and we support them from afar during this very difficult time. So this is where I struggle, because at the time of the Quebec incident, at the time of the IMO incident, we all talked about thoughts and prayers. And I've heard many of our leaders say that thoughts and prayers are not enough anymore. Yesterday, I was watching CBC News World where they were interviewing Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan. I don't know how many of you saw that interview, but the interviewer asked the Prime Minister of Pakistan that, well, this was one young individual who was isolated, who was self-radicalized and did this act. Nobody gets self-radicalized. My kids don't get self-radicalized. It's my responsibility in the house And it's our responsibility in the community that each time you notice, you hear, or you read something, you act on it. Now, I don't mean you go out there and get angry and take the law in your own hands, but you do something. So the responsibility, even though this person is charged with terrorism and with 4 murders, the responsibility lies with every Canadian. Every member of the London community, every member of the Ontario community, and every member of the Canadian community. At Osler, we are committed to anti-discrimination, diversity, inclusion, and equity, not just in the hospitals, but in the communities we so proudly serve. And while we've taken many steps in the right direction, we know that there's still much work to do. So I want to express my support and solidarity with everyone in our community who has been deeply impacted by this tragic event. Now, more than ever, we need to continue to move our community forward to achieve a future where our diversity brings us together and makes us stronger. Thank you, and assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Dr. Naveed Mohammed, for your words. I would now like to call upon Dr. Mohammed Lechemi, President and Vice Chancellor for Ryerson University.
Assalamu alaikum, peace upon you, and thank you for providing me with an opportunity to speak this evening. As I mentioned, was mentioned, my name is Mohammed Lechemi. I'm the President of Ryerson University, but I'm also the Chair of the Council of Ontario Universities. We represent 20 universities in the province and more than 500,000 students. So on behalf of our entire academic community in the province, we grieve and mourn with the Afzal family and the wider Muslim community. I'm also a proud member of Canada's Muslim community and a resident of the Peel region. As we have heard for many during the last week or so, our community is truly heartbroken by the senseless act of terror that took place in London, Ontario. And make no mistake, this was an act of terror. The victims died for no other reason than their faith. As we grieve and mourn for the Afzal family, I also hope that all of us will surround Fayyaz with care, compassion, and unconditional love. As we all struggle to heal from this tragedy, we must remember that this young boy will need us more than ever. As we have heard from our sector, from students, from faculty and staff, it's clear that this attack has shaken not only the Muslim community, but Canada and communities around the world. And I can tell you, as a leader in the post-secondary system, I'm receiving emails from parents around the world asking if it's safe to send their kids to our universities. And I will mention I see many politicians, many friends. The international students bring with them to Canada per year. This is the impact on the economy, $23 billion. I don't want this to happen to Canada the way that happened to Australia. If you remember, because of discrimination against students from India, they paid a big price. And I think it's very important for our government to pay attention to this, because this is not a good reputation for our country. We call on each and every member of our community to honor the lives of the victims and take action towards condemning anti-Muslim racism, Islamophobia, xenophobia, discrimination, and hate in all its forms. We know that this incident is not isolated, but part of a long history of racism and discrimination that impact Muslims, unfortunately, on a daily basis. On a personal level, the traumatic events in the Quebec City Mosque are fresh in my mind, where another act of terror took the lives of 6 worshippers, one of whom, Dr. Khalid Belkacemi, was a longtime friend of mine and a former colleague in grad school in the city of Sherbrooke from the 80s. As a Muslim Canadian, I am well aware that Muslim Canadians form a vital, engaged, and proudly Canadian community that has contributed immensely to the success of this country. Let me give you 2 examples. I'm from the academic side, so 2 victims of the shooting in Quebec City and what happened in London are from the academic side, and both of them are engineers. And we know that engineering is about enhancing the quality of life. It's about saving lives. So I'll give you examples of what they have done. Dr. Belkacemi, who was a professor of food engineering at Laval University, dedicated his life to improving the health to others, from developing trans-fat-free hydrogenated oil to finding sodium-free substance in salt. Madiha Salman, who was murdered with her family last week, was unfortunately just weeks from completing her PhD thesis in civil engineering at Western University. She also dedicated her time to improving the health and well-being of others by working out new ways to treat contaminated soil and groundwater. Both dedicated their time to help improve and eventually save lives. But unfortunately, their own lives were taken by hatred acts. At our university, we're committed to creating a culture that is intentionally diverse and inclusive, acknowledging that we still have work to do with our own community, especially with regard to indigenous reconciliation. We cannot be complicit in the face of injustice and must all take responsibility for confronting and eradicating racism and discrimination of all its forms. And I see the beautiful messages that are shared by our community here, love for all and hatred for none. I want just to remind also our own community, the Muslim community, that we have seen tremendous support from all communities and all faith groups during the last few days. And we need and actually I have many friends at London, Ontario. Someone called me saying that I'm amazed by our brothers from the Sikh community. They were there serving water, cleaning the street. And I told him I'm not surprised. I have a lot of interactions, a lot of friends from the Sikh community. That's part of what we know about the Sikh community, and that's what we know about other communities here in Brampton, in Peel region, and in the GTA. As a community, and I'm addressing this also to the Muslim community, part of it, we should have, if we don't want hatred to none, so we should have a zero tolerance policy on anti-Asian racism. And we have seen a lot of actions against Asians because of the pandemic. We should have zero tolerance policy against anti-Semitism, against anti-indigenous discriminations, and against anti-black racism and all forms of hate and discrimination. As the leader of an institution tasked with shaping a bright future through education of young people and young leaders, you have my steadfast commitment that our institution will be there to help drive meaningful change in our communities, including in the community of Brampton. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammed Lachimi, for your words. I would now like to call upon Dr. Fariha Khan, Board of Director, NCM, from the National Council of Canadian Muslims.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Thank you, Mayor Patrick Brown, for hosting this event, and Brampton City Hall. It seems like it was not that long ago, 2017, I was at this very podium when we had a vigil for the Quebec mosque shooting, and it is heartbreaking but infuriating that we are back here today. On Saturday morning, I was actually working at William Osler, Dr. Naveed's hospital. I was supposed to be doing a vaccine clinic. That morning, actually, the hospital allowed me to graciously take my leave and attend the Janaza funeral in London on Saturday. So my husband and I had driven to London, Ontario, and I'm really at a loss for words to describe what that experience was like, to watch those 4 caskets be brought out and rolled out right in front of me with the Canadian flag draped on them, and then be rolled away about an hour later for the last time. In recent days across the country, people have walked in solidarity with the Afzal family, who was killed while out for a walk. Many of us attended vigils wearing our traditional clothing, again out of solidarity with the Afzal family. We have been standing in solidarity with our London family and with every person who has been treated lesser and hated for what they choose to wear, for the faith they choose to follow, or for the color of their skin, or for where they come from. I have thought often about someone who we might have one day been calling Dr. Madiha Afzal, a bright woman who was about to receive her PhD. Eid was exactly 1 month ago, and like me, the night before Eid, she was probably pulling out the shalwar kameez outfit that she was going to wear. And like me, she had a 9-year-old boy at the time that she probably would have been wrapping a gift for, and she would have been ironing his clothes for the next day. But all of that will never be again for our London family. There is one 4-letter word that Muslim children are having to learn about. And that 4-letter word is the H word. It's hate. They are learning that they have to be vigilant, that they have to be careful, that they have to protect themselves, that the sidewalk might not always be a safe place for them, that the mosque might not always be a safe place for them, that there are people who are so filled with hate that it fuels them to commit unspeakable crimes that shatter the lives of families and communities. At the Janaza on Saturday, there were feelings of grief and sadness, but there were also feelings of terror. People felt terrorized, and there was anger. There was so much anger. I have anger because this keeps happening. I have visited the CCIQ mosque in Quebec to grieve the killing of my 6 Muslim brothers in 2017. I have visited the IMO mosque in Rexdale to grieve the killing of my Muslim brother during this very pandemic, just in September. And now I have visited the mosque in London to grieve the killing of my Muslim brother, my Muslim sister, my Muslim daughter, and my Muslim mother. My 9-year-old turned 10 last week, and I know now that there is a 9-year-old boy who will not have his mother and his family with him when he turns 10. To our political leaders, Islamophobia is killing Canadians. Canadians are dying because of hate directed towards Muslims. Our fear and our grief are immense, but our love and determination and resolve are even greater. As Muslims, we are people of intention. And as Muslims, we are people of action. We don't simply sit with our own thoughts and prayers. We push ourselves to act. To our political leaders, we demand that you do the same. Bill 21 in Quebec legislates hijab-wearing Muslim women as second-class citizens. This is discrimination by our own governments, and it puts Muslim women at risk. We have national security agencies that have been fixated on what we as Muslims are up to and what flights our children are boarding, rather than being focused on the people planning and plotting to kill us. We have white supremacy groups that are thriving and acting with impunity and complete disregard. These groups must be dismantled. Hate and Islamophobia exist in our schools, in our universities, in our workplaces. It terrorizes us in mall parking lots and on sidewalks on sunny spring evenings. The National Council of Canadian Muslims, through all of you here today, demands our political leaders take action now. The other day, the government committed itself to a national action summit on Islamophobia. Every municipality, every province must participate. This is just a beginning. The test of our government is whether it adopts and acts on the recommendations of the summit. We need fundamental change at all levels of government to prevent another attack. From appointing a special envoy on Islamophobia, to removing discriminatory laws, to ensuring that anti-racism and anti-Islamophobia work become part of our education curriculums, and to changing the ways that municipalities deal with street harassment. A whole government approach is needed. It cannot wait. It needs to happen now. To my Brampton community, thank you for being here tonight and standing in solidarity with our London family and standing against hate and Islamophobia. I look at this crowd and I can see that in front of me there's clearly 3 generations of Canadian Muslims here tonight. We grieve the loss of 3 generations of one family in one night. We are absolutely heartbroken, but like I said, we're infuriated as well. But we are also people of love, and we are people of hope, and we are people of faith and action. And through all of this, and through all of the work that lies ahead, I remind us to stand united and hold firmly to the rope of Allah. Jazakallah khair.
तो नाज़रीन, ये था हमारा आज का कम्युनिटी राउंड अप। हमें लगता है कि आपने ज़रूर कुछ इन्फॉर्मेशन इससे हासिल की होगी, क्योंकि हर लेवल ऑफ गवर्नमेंट जो है अब इस्लामोफोबिया, हेट्रेड और इंटॉलरेंस के ऊपर काम कर रही है। आप हमें ज़रूर अपना फीडबैक और कमेंट्स दीजिए कि आज का ये जो हमने इवेंट कवर किया है आपको कैसा लगा। मुझे शाजिया मलिक को और कैमरे के पीछे ज़िशान अहमद को इजाज़त दीजिए। खुदा हाफिज़।